It's Radio Free 501c, the podcast of Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm your host, Cecilia Sepp. It's season 6. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'd love it if you'd like, share, and comment. This week, I'm joined by first-time guest, Beth Miller. She's the founder of Wagtown, and we're going to talk about building Wagtown and how it's her passion project. Welcome to episode 225. Hey everybody, it's Monday, January 22nd, and that means it's time for another episode of Radio Free 501c, brought to you by Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm your host, Cecilia Sepp. I'm the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips Consulting, and thank you so much for joining us this week. To our global audience, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you happen to be. And I think that whole audience is going to get a lot out of this conversation because our topic this week is the Passion Project. And everyone involved in nonprofits, whether you're a volunteer, a member, or a staff person, or a consultant, you have a passion for nonprofit management and what we do and why we do it. And that's why I am so delighted and excited to have a new friend and contact, Beth Miller, who's the founder of Wagtown, join me this week to talk about her passion project. But Beth, before we dive into the topic, welcome. You're a first-time guest on the podcast, which is always exciting. Could you say hello to the audience and tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on here because as you just mentioned, passion project, exactly. So yeah, I had a long career in marketing and strategy and culture shift and could see an opportunity to shift into what I fell in love with, which was the passion of the nonprofits I worked with. So yeah, it drew me into creating a nonprofit called Wagtown that could work with communities to find more structure and more direction and more inspiration to elevate the importance of pet inclusiveness.
Well, and I just love the topic of pet inclusiveness because if you are a person like me who used to watch the Peanuts cartoons growing up, they used to have that running gag with Snoopy and his friend Woodstock, where it would say no dogs allowed, and then they would sing in the background or birds. So I think, pet inclusivity is very important. And one of the things that I like is going to places where I can bring my pets. So I like to go to hotels that welcome dogs, and some hotels have little welcome kits. I live in a very dog friendly neighborhood, so like a lot of the neighbors have dogs, so it's very cool. I also live near Old Town Alexandria, Virginia, which has
Oh
lots of
yeah.
dog friendly
Yeah,
places,
you
which
have
are
got it
probably,
made. That's awesome.
yeah, it's great. So you have Wagtown, you started it, you're committed to it. You have an interesting story about how you came up with the idea and the name. Could you share?
Yeah, I was talking with, not to mention any names, so a person in charge of a humane society organization in somewhere in America. So I'm talking with this gentleman, I say, and I'm all in on like, what could this look like on vision, right? And when I asked him what the community would look like when he was successful, he couldn't answer the question like at all. And I'm like, at first I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, how are we going to get there? I'm just like, with my clients, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you have no plan, right? But then I remembered that he's the one who was out till 3 o'clock in the morning picking up a box of kittens at the sheriff's office. And, I'm not in there. I'm not spaying. I'm not neutering. I'm not rescuing. I'm not fostering. None of that. What I'm trying to do is part of the problem with him is you can't get there unless the culture of your community, of your business, of the economy, and the way that your community is run, it has to have some kind of emotional or logical, whichever reason to kind of go for it. So that's when I thought, well, what if I could build something that would build expertise beyond rescue, right, in that sliver, and get things out of their way, you know? And so that's where it became very passionate for me is how can I make that happen? And so that's when I started to roll into it. And during my master's program, built out the whole thing and had this obstinate thing of I'm going to go after mission and then money, which of course my professor's like, yeah, but you can't do that. So
Yeah, they always say that, but you got to have the idea first. And even big companies that we're all very familiar with, like Amazon, a lot of people don't remember because Jeff Bezos is so fabulously wealthy now. He did not make money on that company for probably 15 years.
really,
Yeah. So he came up with the idea and the concept and he was building it. and he wasn't necessarily making any money off of it. So I think that happens a lot with nonprofits. And like you said, you have to go after the mission first.
Yeah.
So what, so this is something you may not think about a lot because
Okay.
you're in the middle of it. But what was the first big challenge you came upon when you were starting Wagtown?
That's a great question. Well, I live in Ohio in a smallish town, and we were named one of the top 10 dying cities in America. So when I had the concept for Wagtown, I thought, this would be a great thing to energize a community, to increase livability, attract and retain workforce, blah, blah, blah. And we needed all of those things. But Dayton was struggling financially. We had tornadoes, there was a mass shooting. And so it was sort of this group that really needed help. But at the same time, when you take a look at prioritization of funding and activity to happen, when you've had tornadoes and a mass shooting, you're not going to say, let's build a dog park, right? It's just there are priorities for the humans that are not being put out there. Now, if you put a dog park out and there, it was run well with, some sort of social emotional component and community bringing, then you would be helping those issues, right? But it's hard to kind of show people that. So because I'm in a town that is not the first to quickly pick up something new, there was a lot of slugging through. And a friend of mine that does research and animal investigation here, he's like, you need to start in Dayton. I'm like, oh gosh, it's so hard to get anything done here though. And I'm just one person. And he goes, yeah, but that's what we needed. I'm like, okay, so I swallow that like, oh yeah. And that became this journey of trying to make it happen in a community where it's difficult to make it happen. So it was frustrating. It took me triple the time to get anything done and trying to explain to people what it was because they're still so used to calling dog friendly. I can take my dog to a patio.
And that's really not dog friendly. I agree.
Yeah,
It's
that
more
should be
than
table stakes. Yeah. Although in Ohio, it was illegal until 2018 to take
so.
your dog to a patio.
Well, I believe that because we really only had that law changed in Montgomery County, Maryland, I think probably maybe 10 years ago. I mean, it really wasn't that long ago. It's probably less than
Okay.
10 years ago, where they said, well, if you're at a restaurant, well, because it was pre-COVID lockdown, so I know it was before 2020, but it
Yeah.
was, yeah, you weren't allowed to even take them outside of the restaurant. And so
Right.
now they say, oh, that's okay. So, a lot of the places in Montgomery County do that now. You can bring your
Yeah.
dog.
Yeah.
Problem is, like, if it's a place where you have to go in and get food, there's nowhere to leave your dog while you go inside because it's not
Right.
safe to
Right.
just leave your dog outside. Because
Yep.
one time I was sitting somewhere and this woman came up and said, can you watch my dog while I go get coffee? I
Oh
was
my
just some stranger sitting on a bench. Don't do that, people. Don't give your dog to
God.
some stranger on a bench, even if it's
Yeah.
me. But
That's the
anyway,
thing is when we went to Key West to do our research, that was everywhere. So Key West was really high scored from our secondary research that we did
wow.
with some universities. But when you go down there, a lot of animal welfare issues, abuse, lost stray dogs, and very little support for most of the humane organizations. So when you think of it like they're dog friendly, they're everywhere. Well, those are street dogs and dogs that have issues. The dogs should be taken in and taken care of. And so it's tricky,
Well, that's
It's
not dog
almost a
friendly
bait and switch.
then. If
Yeah.
they're just wandering around, that's not dog friendly. That's dog crisis,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
exactly. Exactly.
So
Yeah, so it was disappointing.
yeah, I could see that. It's really sad. You actually just made me remember we went to Aruba one time for a vacation many, many years ago, and Aruba is just full of stray dogs and they attach to people at the resorts.
Oh,
And
man.
this dog was really sweet. We really liked the dog, but we couldn't bring it home. And it was following us everywhere to the point where everybody thought it was our dog. And it just broke my heart because we had to like kick it out. It followed us in the hotel and we had to
Oh
kick
my
it out. And
gosh.
I felt really bad, but
Oh, it would have broken
it's
my
like,
heart.
what are you going to do? So, but that's what Wagtown's trying to help trying to change communities to be aware of what do animals need, not just humans. And then how can we live in harmony with our dog friends? So, do you just focus on the United States with that community building?
My original thought was to sort of start and find a city that, like Portland, or it sounds like the natural, area you'd start in, right? But the more I did my research, and I 800 interviews, and those were primarily in the US. But after I started reaching out to people and people started reaching out to me, it was like, wow, like Hyde Park, people think like maybe that was where the first dog park was actually in Berkeley, California. But there's this mindset of we're dog friendly here, right? And so the things like right now, they just banned American XL bullies, and they're paying people 250 pounds to bring their dogs in to have them euthanized.
What?
So
Oh, that's terrible.
I know, even if they're puppies. So, you know, the states have, we've been there, right? We were there. We had the horrible things happen. We had the bad breeding. We had the like so the nefarious bringing the dog into the world without any intention of an enriching life for them or to be contributing to the family or the community or the neighbors, and that steamrolled into um, like suspicion, and then it became systemic because we started to teach children that these were bad dogs, right? So now everybody's afraid of them, which, as you know, leads to reactivity in the dogs. So if you live in a community where what I would call a dog friendliness desert, you don't have access to veterinary care pretty close to you, certainly not emergent care. If you wanted holistic, that might not be available. There could be specialized training for like hydrotherapy, those aren't available. You could have no pet shops to get food for your dog anywhere. You could live in an area where you can only get kibble and you couldn't do any fresh food and some of your self-cooking. If you don't have a relationship with the first responders in the police department, that's going to be a problem. If you're not working with the schools to educate people on multi-generations, that's a problem. If you're not looking at legislation that might affect what's possible in your community, those are all things that people just don't know about it, so they don't do anything, right? So you get those emails like, click here and talk to your senator, and here's the number, right? There is no centralized call me because there's a problem, right? I guess I am, but
And then you'll
that's
take
what we're
care
trying
of
to do. Yeah, I have time for all that. What I realized was after all those interviews and after all these pilot projects, I still am just me. And so how can I clone myself and say, like, here, world, like, take everything I know, make projects happen, inspire people, bring in new initiatives, and be better. Just be
it.
better, you know?
Right. And help those people. Well, and I think, and of course, one of the passions of nonprofit is building community. And so this is a great opportunity for you to build out that community for communities to have better communities for pets. And, because I know Wagtown focuses on dogs and I'm a dog person, so I love that. But you've brought up a lot of other societal issues that I think need to be addressed, not just by you at Wagtown, but all of us, like, puppy mills. And, are these dogs being bred to be healthy and happy and bring joy to a family, or are they just being churned out like widgets on an assembly line? And there's some parts of the United States where this is there's just a terrible industry going on and on. One of my neighbors, actually, her dog was adopted from a puppy mill that was busted up, and he had
Oh,
had no
nice.
socialization. He was just a stud. So all he did was sire puppies. And so it took her about 2 years to really get him socialized. And he is now the sweetest little dog you would ever meet because she took the time.
Right.
Both of my dogs are rescue dogs. So it's really important, to make sure that people understand where is your dog coming from
Hmm.
and how healthy are they? Is it from a respected, responsible breeder, or
Right.
is it just some guy with a barn and a bunch of crates? And
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And,
we need to.
knowing, like a friend of mine had an Australian cattle dog. I love the dog, fantastic, super friendly, but I would never have one because I don't have enough energy and I don't have that lifestyle to make that dog really have a great life experience, right? So a Great Dane, crash on the couch, maybe that would work. So if you're working, then you can just crash over there. But you're right, there are opportunities for us to take, and we'll start to see in terms of the passion projects. I talk to people every week, several people email me, call me, Zoom, whatever, telling me about these amazing ideas that they have to make the dogs' lives better. And we're starting to see, despite the fact that it's a total cash cow, I mean, the pet industry is a total moneymaker. It's just a gold machine. So everybody's pivoting into it. And the nice thing is that while we have a certain percentage of people that are like, this is a unicorn, like we need to jump on this one because we're going to make a lot of money on XYZ. Most of the people that I talk to, they'll say, I'm developing this product called Spleesh, and it's going to, ease overheating and, and all kinds of different benefits to this. but that still needs to be something that's instilled in the community, and that people who are in that community and want to potentially get into the pet space, they would feel like there's an avenue to do that, and people in the community who have already gone there. Because then you start to create that belonging, like Maslow, like creating that structure and then the safety. Then you have the belonging and the reward and accomplishment. And then when you self-actualize at the top, major on Maslow, when you get to the top of that, if you can get them to self-actualize, that's me clone. See what I mean? So that's my goal, is if I get hit by the dog food truck tomorrow, this is awesome. And so
She's a
tell them
dog
my
food
Apple,
truck
but
instead of bus. Yeah, I love
yeah,
it. But and you're speaking my language, citing Maslow, because we
really,
talk about Maslow in our ethics course, and
I
there's a
love.
wonderful paper that came out in 2008 by two scholars, Strickland and Vaughn, and it's called The Hierarchy of Ethical Nonprofits. And they took Maslow's hierarchy of needs and converted it for an ethical organization. And it's a wonderful,
Nice.
wonderful reference point.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I love that. That's a great thing to reference. And
Oh,
when we're
absolutely.
looking at passion projects, a lot of people may give up though. Like they say, oh, I have a passion for creating this new nonprofit. And really, it's fairly easy to get one incorporated, but it's difficult to keep it going.
Mhm.
So, what are some of the things that you're hoping to accomplish this January 2024? What are some of the things you're hoping to have accomplished by January 2025?
Yeah, yeah. That's a great question, a big question. One of the things that I'm working on is I had developed a platform that would bring together multiple areas of interest for bringing in better infrastructure. The program was built, the courses were live, people were buying, but there was a trademark intervention. So everything had to be thrown away and I have to restart. So in order to make that work and bring all those people into this system that systemically have that passion that you were talking about, in addition to innovation and investment and all those things, how can I make that work? So kind of like take a step back, and then in terms of, gratitude for the end of the year, even though that was really, really hard, heartbreaking. I got defiant, so I pushed back when I knew I couldn't win. Um, and then having this like, I'm gonna do it. Like this is David and Goliath. Like surely they'll side with me because I'm in the right. As we all know, that's not how it works, right? So I am like a Pollyanna, dig for the pony, but being able to go down deep on those things and realize that there's a time to cut and run. And then to look at it and go, no, it took me about 2 weeks after everything kind of just flatline, blew up, and was done. And I went from, you can't do this to me. I'm doing it for the right reason. You're doing it for another reason. This should win because it's for people and for dogs.
Right.
So that part of it ticked me off because I didn't want this to be a corporate agenda. I wanted it to be a social good that would be systemic and sustainable. Um, that made me reset and think about how I was going to approach this and how I would fill that population with people to have that Maslow experience that you just talked about.
Mhm.
Um, so at some point, when I took a look at everything that I had created for this platform, every time I posted something, because of my personality, I'm like, that could have been a little better if I did this, right? Because it's
Right.
always tweaking it, especially when I know it's going toward the passion for dogs, right? So for me, when it was my client, my name's on it, their name's on it. My job is to make them look good, right? Now it's my job to make the argument for dog, to bring people into the conversation that are doing like Medicaid for dogs and things like that. Um, those are those passion wheels that need to keep going, that can be exhausting. But at the same time, I have this sort of oh yeah, a
Mhm.
personality where if you want me to do something, just tell me that I can't. So even though I've had some even attacks from like friends who were talking behind my back of like she's just coasting, she just doesn't want to work. And I'm like, well, yeah, come in and do my 14 hours a day and then we'll talk about, I mean, all nonprofits, right? I'm sure you talk to people that are just exhausted constantly. And it's tough up here and in your heart to keep that going. And so I think if you don't have passion in your project, I just don't see how it's going to work. I mean, there's no way you can reach your vision without passion because
That's
people are attracted to it.
Well, it's that energy. And also, I think you've hit a great point. People getting exhausted in the nonprofit world, and I've been there, done that myself over my long career doing this. And I have really learned over the years that one of the problems is people try to do too much at once, and they try to be all things to all people, or they say I should do this, I should do that. But what we have to do is really build that structure out and build that base, that very strong base that's going to work and is
Yeah.
going to attract the people who want to be involved and do a few things well. I was talking to a few weeks ago and he said fewer, bigger, better. And it's not that they don't want to work as hard, but the work they do, they want it to be the best work possible and the most impactful. And I
Yeah.
think that's what nonprofit management should focus on because
Yeah.
it's the groups that are focused on their mission and mission
Mhm.
fulfillment that are the most successful. So I just, well, this has been very exciting. Your passion is really coming across talking to you, listening. You're so excited about so many different things that you could be
Yeah.
doing. But before we wrap up this episode for the week, you've got to tell everybody about the summit you're planning for May.
Oh, thank you for bringing that up. As a part of my journey of trying to restart, what I was hoping to do was take all of the nonprofit that I've never been paid in 7 years. I wrote a children's book. I gave it away for free. The curriculum is free to all the schools. We did a program for restaurants and bars. So everything I've done has been proof of concept and give. So, and I always had this Pollyanna thing of like, one day there will be a vertical that will make sense for profit that will solve so many problems and bring so many people together and Maslow the crap out of it, right? And then realizing that then that segues into what if this was a successful for-profit entity that would not only be a money machine for us to continue to invest in bringing more people into that space, but also have enough profit that we could transfer over enough money to self-fund Wagtown's work so that when we go into a community, I'm not cannibalizing fundraising efforts and donations to other animal organizations because I don't want it to be like Wagtown's here, there goes our capital fund, right? I want to
Right.
be able to bring in and say, we're going to provide Tucker Finds His Forever Home for all students. We're going to do these assemblies for nothing. We're going to provide this to the police officers for nothing, right? And to do that, I needed to build this pillar of this business. And now that that kind of got, right, it gave me a chance to say, well, what I'm bringing together here is experts and learners and people who have a marketplace of things that they need, but also a place to recharge that battery of passion. And so the summit is built to bring in educators and subject matter experts from all over the world so we can have these global conversations about how do we define dog friendliness in a revolving way, because just like all over the world, all across the US, it's very different. So with this summit, we can bring people in to talk about what we found with Wagtown, which is economic development, humane, safer, healthier communities, responsible dog ownership, infrastructure changes to be more welcoming, so that people understand that dog friendliness is so whitewashed because we think it's about taking your dog to a patio.
Mhm.
It's so much more. It can affect our health in ways that we can't even imagine. And that's just one category. So the point of this summit is to educate and inspire people about like, man, I didn't even know that was possible. Dr. Blackwell is literally doing a project in LA to provide Medicaid level support for people with animals that can't afford it. I mean, like crazy, right? Big stuff like that. So I want people to know about it. I want people to support him. And I want to be the person underneath those people. I'm like, look at this person, what they're doing. And so with this summit, it's the hardcore stuff of bringing in like the economic development people and the architects and the land use planning and, all that kind of stuff, but also bringing in the passion, right? Because we need to have that shared heart kind of experience to really get in and be able to put in a systemic solution, even if it's rolling out, um, because you've reached the right person. And if you're in their office and you see a dog, when you're talking to them, say, do you have a dog? Is that your dog? And bam, you've got them. They'll
Mhm.
start taking their phone out. Oh, and we're having problems with, and see, you got them, right? Now you've got them in that passion position where you live.
Mhm.
And we're hoping that that meeting of passion and commerce and learning will explode into people being inspired all over the place. So if you have people that obviously are in the passion projects, maybe they like dogs, or really any animals, yeah, I would love to have them there. If anyone has content topics, concerns about things that we should be discussing there, please reach out to me, because that's what we're doing right now, is building, the speakers and vetting that content. But I really need to know what people want to know,
Great.
what will help
Well,
them get there.
well, that's wonderful. And, that's actually a great closing thought for this episode is to reach out to you and
Yes.
help you create that content for the summit. How can people get in touch with you if they'd like to learn more about your passion project and Wagtown and your upcoming summit?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. Yeah, Wagtown, the nonprofit organization material, that's at wagtown.org. That's my 501c3. And then the dogfriendlysummit.com is where the event will happen. So that's where those two pieces will come from there, and we'll have some exciting live things to get us started. So if they started there, and then on LinkedIn, it's just Beth Sherry Holmes Miller. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one. So I would love to connect with people, even if you're not planning on being at the summit. I'm always, well, 800 people I talk to, right? I'm always looking to hear other opinions. So I'm glad that you brought that out, because I know that you're talking to people that get where my heart is.
Yes. Yes, we all do. I think we all have a passion for nonprofit management, and we all have our own little passion projects that we work on that maybe don't directly relate to what we do for a living, but it's our passion project, whether it's gardening or
Yeah.
Tai Chi or painting or extreme sports. We all
Yes.
have the other thing we're passionate about. Well, Beth, thank you so much for joining me. It's been great hearing your passion come out in your voice, seeing your energy, and spreading the word about Wagtown, because I think it's a great thing and it's definitely needed. So thank
Thank
you
you.
for joining me. And we have to go rogue for now, but we'll be back next week with another exciting episode. So stay tuned. If you haven't subscribed or followed us yet, please do on your favorite podcast service. If you'd like to learn more about Rogue Tulips Consulting and how we can help you bloom outside the box, check out our website, roguetulips.com, and you can visit our services page and see some of the things that we help nonprofits with. So, on behalf of Beth and myself, thank you for joining us this week, and we will see you next time.